Here I am with Anthony Trimino.
Good to meet you.
Welcome to Destiny Church. Here we are in the midst of a recall, okay? 2.2 million people signed a petition saying, we want Governor Newsom recalled. So September 14th, we all get the opportunity. Most important question on the ballot is number one.
Yes.
We have to vote yes.
Absolutely. Yes on question number one, no doubt. No matter what you do on question number two, you have to vote yes on question number one.
And we need people to influence other people to get out and vote.
100%. They're not expecting the turnout that we want, so we need to just rally. We need to get people, tell people, go and vote with people so that we get the biggest turnout possible.
Aunts, uncles, friends,
neighbors, church, people in the church, people that you work with, you know, and definitely friends and family for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that's intriguing about you, Anthony, as a candidate is your story. So you have this life that is, I look at it and say, this was a wonderful life, but then you said, I want to run for governor. I mean, why would you want to run for governor? Tell us a little bit about your story, and how did you get to this point saying, I want to be involved in this?
Sure. Well, my story is that I'm the grandson of a man who fled communist Cuba in the 50s, right? He wanted to pursue the American dream, and I know that sounds cliche, but when you're not an American, when you live outside of America, the American dream is a real thing. They teach it to their kids, and you aspire for it. So he came to this country, and the last thing he wanted to do was depend on the government. He had just left a communist regime. He wanted to be independent, so he became an entrepreneur. Started a small little metal finishing company in Los Angeles, California. That company still exists today. My father owns that company, and they instilled in me an entrepreneurial spirit. My father allowed me to work at the family business for about 6 weeks before he fired me. He said, you need to go find your own way.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like, there's too many Triminos in here, and ultimately he wanted me to pave my own path, right? And so I did that. I started my family young. 20 years ago this November, I started a small little company in Downey, California, 200 square foot office. I built that company up over the last 20 years to be what Inc. magazine just called one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America.
Wow.
2 years in a row, and one of them being 2020. In the height of a pandemic, my entire industry was imploding on itself. 80% of the businesses in my industry had gone through 3 rounds of layoffs. We increased our physical footprint by 3 times, doubled our staff, and didn't lay anyone off. And so why do I say that? Not to boast. I say that because we're not just electing a governor, we're hiring a CEO. California is the 5th largest economy on the planet. And so you ask, you know, why in the world, you know, you run a successful company. I've been with my wife for 26 years, married 24. We have 5 beautiful children, 4 biological, 1 adopted, and we were foster care parents. So why in the world would I want to run for governor?
Why would you?
It's not so much a want, right? Yeah. It's almost like a need. So our businesses are being attacked. Our families are being attacked. Our children, our way of life, and ultimately our churches. And I was ready to just pack up and leave like so many other business owners do and have done. I was going to Florida, and my wife diligently prayed that we would reconsider, that we would stand and fight for California. Originally, it was going to be I was going to get behind a candidate, and I was going to put all my energy, finances, and time and attention behind somebody. And when we started to list out the things that were important to us, right, the things that we felt a governor needed to possess to run California, we realized that many candidates checked many boxes, but not any candidate checked all the boxes that we needed. CEO, someone that understood, had a family that understood what families are going through, a strong, conservative, consistent, biblical principle individual. And so we decided to actually do what I've been telling my kids since they were born. If you can't find a solution, be the solution. Again, that sounds cliche, but my kids were watching me pack up and talk about packing up and leaving. Hey, things are tough here in California. We don't like it. Let's leave. And I just could not, in good conscience, allow them to see that as a resolution to the problem. So we decided to dig our heels in and fight for California.
Well, first, thank you for not leaving.
Yeah.
And thank you for the stand that you have taken and your desire to be a part of the solution. So we have the average home in California, $800,000. The American dream, the California dream, is not realistic anymore. How as a leader, a CEO, governor, how do you start to fix that problem so people can come back to California?
Well, first of all, we need to make California a business-friendly state again. We're driving out our businesses, right? There's this, I tell people all the time, if we start to attack high net worth individuals and we start to drive them out of the state, they're going to take themselves, their companies, their jobs, and their tax dollars out of the state, right? What does it do to the middle class? It puts unnecessary burden on them. And so the problems that we're facing, especially with housing prices, is that there's too much government in California. There's too much red tape, too much bureaucracy, too many regulations, right? Because we don't have anybody at the helm that understands how to run California like a business. And that's one of the critical aspects that I think our leader needs to have. We need a business owner. We need somebody who understands balance sheets, right? We need someone that understands the importance and significance of rolling back red tape, regulations, and allowing a thriving economy through keeping businesses here and inviting them back.
Yeah. So much like Trump in 2015, businessman emerges, becomes president, and we saw the growth of the United States in so many different areas. It's kind of the same model that you're kind of thinking in terms of, here I am from the marketplace, been successful. Let me get in and get government out of the way so people like yourselves, business owners, small and large, can be successful in California again. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there are some similarities with regards to Trump as a CEO, I'm a CEO, but there's huge differences as well in that, my strong conservative biblical background, unwavering, uncompromising. I feel like California has moved away from God. And if you think about all of our problems, right? Think about homelessness, think about our jails, think about foster care, think about all of those problems that plague us as a society. Those are all symptoms, but they're symptoms of what? A bigger disease. What's the bigger disease? Broken homes, families. We don't have a family first agenda. We need somebody that understands the importance and significance of a family first agenda, putting families first. And I think that that's what a unique attribute that I bring to the table, in addition to being a businessman.
So talk about families. Education is really important to families. And a lot of families are going to private schools, charter schools, doing homeschool, because they don't like what's being taught. And I know a governor doesn't have complete control over that. You're working through people who make policies and approve curriculum. But when we start to see the curriculum in our public school become pornographic for grade school, as a governor, we have to address that at some point in time. So what would be your approach to public education and reforming it?
Yeah, so if you think about what Castro did to Cuba, what Hitler did in Nazi Germany, they start to prey on our most vulnerable citizens, right? Our children. They start to indoctrinate them at a young age with radical ideologies. Because if you can create a society of chaos, you can remain in control. And so what we need to do is we need to not just take a reactive approach, we need to be proactive. We need to find those teachers, find those schools that are teaching these radical ideologies and shut them down. Stop funding and really suffocate them from being able to do that. Critical race theory, sexuality, masturbation, these are subjects being taught to children as young as third grade. It's absolutely ridiculous, it's absurd. The government is allowing this to happen. If you and I were walking down the street and we pulled a 12-year-old over and said, hey, we want to talk to you about your sexuality, we want to talk to you about masturbation, we would be arrested.
Right.
But you and I, the next day, could walk into a classroom in front of 30 kids and basically have that same conversation. It should be banned and illegal, and it would be so. That's what I would fight and advocate for as governor. And the reason why, one more thing, it's personal to me. One of the other things that I want people to understand is that the subjects that I'm talking about, and the reason why I think I'm a good match for this particular role at this particular time, is because I have skin in the game. When we talk about business, I'm a business owner. When we talk about churches being open, I am, church is critically important to me. But I also have children, and one of them, a 14-year-old daughter, that's still in the public school system. So this is very real to me. This is, this is personal to me. So the fight is very personal, and I think that that's That's a critical aspect of also what I bring to the table, is the ability to connect at a personal level on these topics.
Which, I think we're trying to do it maybe from two different perspectives of, I'm a pastor, and I'm fighting for not just, California, but I'm fighting for a generation that's coming behind me. And my daughter, who's 30 years old, is now pregnant. She's going to have a child. I'm fighting for that next generation. And I hear you say the same thing. You want to move into the political arena to really, we're fighting for the next generation.
Sure.
The millennials. What do you have to say to millennials? And even that generation coming from behind, they're not voting yet, but what would you say to them?
My daughter, there's a video from my daughter where she talks about, conversations we've had together, and one of the things she says is that, my dad taught me that anything is possible, right? And I believe that that's a lesson my grandfather taught me, because he came to this country in pursuit of that American dream. I think what our younger generation needs to know is that we're in a battle right now to try and leave California in a better place than we received it. And that battle has just begun. And if you think about the things that we're dealing with, whether it's medical freedom, whether it's critical race theory, sexuality, it's pervasive. And the battle has just begun. And although we're doing this for the future, there's so many things that we can do now that will impact our children in real time. And so I would just encourage the youth to watch, pay attention to what we're doing right now, because these are critical times, and we were born for such a time as this. And I think that right now we have an opportunity, you and I, to change the trajectory, not just of our state, but of our nation. If we do that, we can change the trajectory of the world. And so I would encourage all of our youth, and I say that as a challenge.
Right.
And if my daughter was here, I'd say, sit back and watch. Yeah. Watch what your dad is doing. Watch what these pastors are doing. Watch what these advocates, these leaders that are rising up from the church, watch what we do, and hold us accountable for what we do. And I often say, as Christians, we always say when we teach our children, one day you're going to stand before God and you're going to be accountable for all the things you've done. Everyone fundamentally understands that, right? You're going to stand and be accountable for everything you've done. But I believe that there's another side of that coin that no one talks about. And I believe that one day we're going to stand before God, and we're going to also be accountable for the things we did not do. And I think that our youth are watching, I think God's watching, and I think this is our opportunity, not just to worry about the things we're doing, but to really take inventory of the opportunities He's given us and whether or not we take them and make the most of them. And so that's what I would say to the youth: watch, see what we do.
So if by chance you don't become governor, I think you would also be a good pastor. I mean, you got a little preach in you, which is great. I love it.
It's just truth. It's just truth, They talk about, we talk about revival in the church, right? But if revival just stays within the four walls of the church, it does nobody any good.
Right.
Revival needs to overflow into the communities, into our businesses, and into politics. So what I'm talking about is maybe the new form of politics. It's maybe the new form of, it's less about what I go to Sacramento to do and more about what I'm there to undo, right? To give back our freedoms and our liberties. And yeah.
So let's talk about some of the hot issues right now, and mandates. Destiny has made some news just because we started receiving loads of phone calls. I'm going to lose my job. I've worked for this company for 20 years. If they don't get a vaccine, I'm going to lose my job. Is there a religious exemption for us? And so we researched it, and we provided that for the people who came to Destiny, and it was overwhelming. So we have, our governor wants mandate, for vaccines, mandates for masks. Where do you stand on that?
Our governor actually said, as part of his defense strategy to getting recalled recently, that it's, if he gets recalled, more people will die of COVID. It's a scare tactic, right? COVID didn't cause the pandemic. It was our overreaction to it that caused it. So it's very simple. This is a topic. This is almost the only topic that we should be talking about, because everywhere I go across the state, this is the number one question I get asked. People are petrified right now. They're worried about their children not being able to go to school. They're worried about losing their jobs. They're worried that they're going to have to move out of state, all because of an overreaching government on medical mandates. So my policy is simple. Day one, lift the state of emergency. take power away from local governments to implement overreaching mandates, vaccine and masks, stop any and all conversation around vaccine passports and verification systems, because it's just another form of discrimination, and then lift the mandate on all of our healthcare workers, our teachers, and our students so they can go back to school and go back to work. And I do so, and this is what distinguishes me from a lot of candidates, not just at a state level, but all the way through at a local level as well. I've been to board of supervisors, I've been to schools, I've been to school boards with parents. We've stood there rallying, picketing, fighting for our children, right? If somebody gets into office and they only lift the mandate at a state level, all of those parents and all of those rallies that will continue to happen a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. So what we need is just a really firm footing on zero mandates across the state at every level of government.
That's awesome. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. People have misinterpreted what I am saying. I am not a person that says I'm anti-vaccination. I don't know if you have
100%, and it's funny, we have to clarify that all the time. It's just about choice. Right. I'm not, pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. In fact, I don't really care what you do. It's not my choice, and I don't believe the government should have a say in it either. Statistically speaking, half the people in this room have gotten the vaccine. And I know, I have many family members and employees that have gotten the vaccine. That's not the issue. It's about choice. It's about, if you want the vaccine, you should be able to get it, and the state should be able to provide it to you. But if you don't want it, you've done the homework, weighed out the pros and cons, and decided that for you and your family, it didn't make sense. Nobody, especially the government, should force you into taking a vaccine, which many consider still an experimental drug. And the masks, the science don't support it, and so there should be no mask mandates either.
So, big issue for evangelicals is sanctity of life. Should we send taxpayers' money, state money, to fund abortions?
Absolutely not. Not a penny of taxpayer dollars should go toward abortion. I was just at the Capitol, actually, and there's a bill that's being looked at that will give 12-year-old girls access to their parents' health insurance to get abortions outside of their parental approval. I mean, it's just completely absurd. It's absurd. And so, no, I do not believe that we should be funding abortions. I believe that life begins at inception and that we need to protect it at all costs. And I'm happy to see what's happening in Texas. Yeah. I'm proud of that fight, and I think that if we had some more strong governors in place and we get a few more states, we can start to tip the tides in favor of protecting life.
That's awesome. How would you then, becoming governor, how would you invite the faith community to have a seat at your table?
The faith community already has a seat at my table. Right. I knew when I started this journey that God was going to move through the church. There's 16 million Christians in California, 40 million people in California. The church has more power than it chooses to use. And so the church will have a seat at the table because the church needs a seat at the table, because me going into office would be basically on the shoulders of the church. And I tell people all the time, look, I make no mistake about it. California is a melting pot, right? Atheist, agnostic, Muslim, you name it, we have it, right? And I tell people all the time, you do not have to be Christian to support my campaign, but you're going to want me to be, because you're going to want someone in office that actually is accountable to someone bigger than himself, right? That will pull from those resources, biblical foundation, when times get tough, when lobbyists come knocking, when power and money are in play, right? You want somebody with good, consistent moral values. So the church needs to be at the table, and not to push our faith on anybody, but fundamentally the church is fighting for human rights. And that's one thing that we lack in California, is anybody advocating for our freedoms, our constitutional freedoms.
Yeah, there can be a great partnership, marriage between civics and church.
100%. The church is going to be responsible under my administration for dealing with a lot of the homeless problems. I mean, you're talking about organizations from San Diego to San Francisco with feet on the street that are already doing that good work, that are not backed by the government, not funded, and don't have the infrastructure to scale. So the church is going to be a critical component to actually changing the trajectory of California.
Yeah, I see it that we have to do it together. We hired here at Destiny, beginning of the pandemic, we said we need somebody who's dedicated to civic issues in our church. So there's a person who teaches education from a biblical perspective to our people in our church. But with this, we don't want to just give you information. We want to empower you to live out your faith and be involved in government, be involved in civics. So I'm glad to hear that you would encourage churches to do that, people of faith to do that.
It's critically important. I mean, right now what's going to save the state is prayer, but it's also faith. But faith, the way I define faith, is as a verb. And faith requires action.
Right.
And so it's going to be the church exercising faith as an action to actually bring about the change that we need to see. The church has been asleep.
Yeah.
Just think about it. The church has been asleep.
Yeah.
And I think that our governor last year, he miscalculated and he provoked the church. Because it doesn't matter if you're a Democratic, Independent, Republican. The moment he could have gotten away with attacking our businesses, closing our businesses. Maybe could have gotten away with attacking the church because the church is kind of asleep on that matter. But when he started to come after our children and attacking the family, then all of a sudden party lines disappeared. And he actually unified so many people. And the church is the tip of the spear on this effort to really just, funnel that righteous anger, in the voting booth. And I've seen just a revival of people wanting to get involved, more pastors getting involved, churches getting involved and getting activated. It's critically important.
Well, Proverbs 29 says, when the righteous are in rule, are in doing the right thing, the people rejoice. So righteous, people get hung up on that word. It's really just do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
When the wicked are, the people mourn. And California has been in pain for a while. We need some people who will do the right thing.
That's an important thing. So doing the right thing, I really feel like the spirit of compromise is waging war against faith right now. And that there's just so much compromise, and we don't have to compromise. It's very easy to justify doing certain things or not doing certain things. But we're not called as the church to compromise. We're called to be firmly rooted in biblical principles and to do our part, right? Not necessarily worried about the outcome. We all need to do our part, do what's right, do what's just, and allow God to move. He's still the God of miracles. He's still wanting to show up. I tell people all the time, we need to allow God to play his role in this. People tell me often, when they ask my strategy for winning, I'm like, look, I sat down with some of the best political strategists in the beginning of this, and they all had the same strategy for winning. Hey, you need X amount of dollars, you need these endorsements, you need these affiliations, and if all things calculated correctly come together in your favor, you can win. And I looked at those strategies and I said, okay, so if I get to office one day off your strategy and your contributions and your endorsements, there's absolutely no room for God. But if we go a non-traditional way and we do things without those funds, without those endorsements, without those affiliations, then the day I take office, there's no room for anybody but God. Okay. And so that's allowing God, that's being obedient, right? Doing our part, and then allowing God to do his. And I think that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want anybody to take credit for the change that's coming. He wants it.
Yeah. So, talking about faith, miracles, we're a few days away from September 14th. Tell me in your last statement here how you can win this election.
If people show up, right? If people don't compromise, and I'll just be, just be blunt. So we look at things through secular lenses and say, hey, the only way this changes is if we get behind the most popular candidate, the one with the most money, the most, the most popularity, the biggest name recognition. And maybe that candidate is not necessarily ideally who we want, but it's a beginning. I think if everyone who said that decided that they weren't going to compromise and they were going to leverage their vote and they were going to get behind who they believed, regardless of who that is, me or somebody else, if they voted their conscience, if they activated their network of people, family, friends, churches, I believe that not just a miracle could happen, but the necessary change that we need can happen. And so with a few days left, I truly believe that we've built one of the fastest growing campaigns in recent history. I believe our momentum is huge. We're flying under the radar. I said it in the beginning. I said, look, God's going to do something different here. Remember, so I think it's in 1 Kings, they were listening for God, right? And so they looked for him in the wind that was shattering rocks, in the fire that consumed the mountain, and in the earth shaking. And he was nowhere to be found. Where was he? He was in the whisper, right? And when I started this campaign, that's what I told people. I said, it's not going to be traditional. You're not going to see us in the wind. You're not going to see us in the fire. You're not going to see us in the earth shaking. We'll be in the whisper. And what we've done is we've built a momentum of people that have whispered to other people. And I'm incredibly optimistic that we're bigger. There are more of us than anybody gives us credit for. And I think we're going to see incredible numbers in just a week from now.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you, hearing your story, hearing your heart especially. I think what people are looking for is not a career politician, and we have some great politicians.
Sure.
There are some wonderful people
Sure.
who are politicians. But they are looking for somebody who has conviction, who will speak from the heart, and that's what I heard today from you, Anthony. It's a pleasure meeting you, getting to know you one-on-one here, seeing your face everywhere.
Thank you.
We have to get question one right.
100%, no doubt.
Yes, recall Newsom. And then we pray God's blessing upon you and your efforts. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
God bless you, man.
God bless you too.